Hi, Dr. Love. This is number 3 on the final or the 5-minute video talking about professional development and the implementation guide for other teachers on how to do guided math. So one, if I was explaining this to a teacher on what is guided math, I'd basically say guided math is just a way to meet the needs of all students, but like teaching to their level. So we want students to learn and grow, but if we teach them all the same thing all the time, students might get confused. They might not be there yet, so they might be frustrated and have no idea what they're doing. And what does it look like? To me, guided math is like small groups and math stations. You can teach many lessons, but then breaking into groups in one like small group. So one group would like go with the teacher and work very independently with them, so the teacher knows like where that student's at and they can like keep notes and track their ability that way rather than just like getting homework back. And it's also other centers, and for example, it's like in the book it talked about basic fact center, hot topic review center, geometry centers, word problem centers, math poem center, math journal center, and then math vocabulary center. And obviously those depend on like what grade level you have, but in the book it just talked about some of the centers you could have. And then the next one is, why should teachers use it? Again, because it pulls students into small groups and teaches them at their zone of proximal development. That's from the book, not in my words, but to me, I really like that because I just feel like it explained it so well. But to me, that means that we're breaking we're breaking students into groups of their own, like, not knowledge, but like where they're at ability wise at that topic. And we're teaching them for where they're at, and like we're trying to expand their learning, but we're still teaching them like the lessons that they don't quite understand yet or need more help with. So for example, you wouldn't, like for these groups, if you were teaching multiplication and you had some groups just like whizzing through it, some groups might still be learning like doubles, like we're counting by 2, so like that's multiplication like by 2. It's just like breaking it down for the needs of every individual student. So what are the benefits for guided math? I think honestly they kind of speak for themselves. Like just talking about them up to this point, like every student is getting met individually. So some benefits I wrote down are students are working at their own pace or instructional level. So they're not being too challenged where they're getting frustrated and not like retaining any of the information or even learning. They're just frustrated. They're learning at where they're at and like growing from there. And then it really makes them master the skill before they move on. And so we'll talk about this. Well, the next question is, what's the role do assessments play? And there's so many different types of assessments. There's ongoing, there's formal, but basically guided math is you take a pretest before every chapter or lesson, or not lesson, but like unit. And you break them into like your ability grouping there. So you put the higher students together and you put the lower students together, and then the kids in the middle, they're broken up too into like their other kids that are about the same level. And then you do these math centers like throughout the day. So every group meets with the teacher. Maybe the lower students meet with her 2 or 3 times a week, whereas like the higher ups meet 1 to 2 times a week, just like depending on like how much time you have aligned for math. But then assessments, like the ongoing, you're basically like keeping track of like what you talk about during your time together in small groups, and you're writing down like what they say, the words they say, or like what they say, like how they're explaining it. And it's basically, one of them that I really like is the checklist. So like as they're going through and mastering a skill, you're checking it off, and that's the assessment part. So like you can have like the test at the end to like see the growth, but you're assessing them through the whole time they're with you in the small groups. So next is, how do you train students to become more independent and well-behaved? So in the book, it talks about the first 20 days are very essential for teaching the students how to really do math groups. And it breaks it down by weeks. So in like week 1, you're going to talk about what a good mathematician does. And throughout the week, you're going to talk about what math workshop is, which is like your math centers. And then how do you communicate with others? So how do you express your ideas and talk about your ideas? And how do you show your work? And then how do good mathematicians write? So basically you're giving them all the tools they need for how to do the math centers and talk with others throughout the whole year. And you practice this every day, and then you continue to add more things. So it's like then week 2, you're going to practice like number. How do we participate in number talks? You're basically practicing how to do your math centers. You're not really necessarily doing your math centers. Like you might show examples, you might practice them, but that's what you're doing. You're just practicing them before you're turning them loose. So when you do turn them loose independently, they'll be able to do it. Your math centers how you want them to do. So that's my number 3 on professional development and the implementation of our implementation guide for how to teach others about guided math. So thank you.